Good morrow, godlings. Okay, today we're gonna have a little talk about some things that I think need clarification. In the background we have the morning thunder. That is being delivered in theta at approximately 7.9 hertz to induce theta wave. Gentle rain sounds and not scary thunder, distant thunder. Why today? Well, I'm going to tell you, I haven't, even though I have a history many of you may know from my earliest recountings of my NDE in my childhood, I have a history of summoning rain. I haven't done it at all since, I'd say, it was Idalia. Hurricane Idalia, I was summoning rain really hard for about 5 days right before the storm chose to turn and come directly at me. And so it did a lot of damage here, and then I got hit by Debbie, and then I got hit by Helene. So I didn't summon rain all that time after Idalia. And there was a long period when in 2024, nearing the high point of the hurricane season, there was a long lull in the Atlantic basin of absolutely no hurricanes because I was not summoning rain, period. And the weather forecasters were all a little freaked out by this because, after all, they make a lot of revenue for the Weather Channel in storm coverage. They get people all worked up, which is why they catastrophize everything, although a lot of things lately are catastrophes. But they catastrophize everything because the research shows, survey says, frightened and or angry people check the news much more often, and frightened people check the weather if they're scared over impending weather events. They check a lot more. So the catastrophizing is actually being done in order to simply get you to check in more. That allows them, because more people are checking more often, allows them to sell more ad space. And I imagine ad space is even more expensive when there are ongoing storms. In 1986, the Weather Channel came online, and coincidentally, the rate and ferocity of hurricanes has been amplifying ever since 1986 at a rate much higher than what was generally expected in the scientific community, which thought that things would take a little while longer than they're taking to actually come unraveled. Now, there's a reason for that, why things are coming unraveled so quickly. It's because of us. We keep training our attention because the Weather Channel keeps saying, like they did during the lull when there are no storms, look right here. The model says in a week or two that there may be a spin up right here. And I have to tell you, there's a lag in between summoning rain by expecting it and looking for a storm. All right, there's a lag, a time period when it takes for the astral realm version of that rain, that storm, to sync up with the physical version in Earth venue. And the worst thing you can think when you don't want a storm is not that, dear God, not that. Do not emote fear or anger or frustration or any other negative emotion while staring at the wind field map, please, because the Weather Channel told you, hey, everybody look over here, we need a storm, because there hasn't been one in a long time, and our ad revenues are falling off, people getting complacent and relaxed again, we can't have that. So everybody please train your attention on this spot over here in the Bay of Campeche, and let's watch, because there could be a storm. Historically, there have been storms developed this time of year right there, and they've been a catastrophe when it happened, and oh my God, the things that occurred. Now let us remind you of all the horrific things that have occurred. And then again, You know, it's like we're like well into the winter storm season and now spring storm season. And they are still showing us images from hurricanes and talking about the devastation of hurricanes. And the point of that is to keep us in fear and worked up so that we check the Weather Channel more often for updates, okay? But the side effect is we are generating these storms and intensifying them with our angst. Look, I'm not saying climate change isn't real. It's certainly real. We don't know all the factors that are driving it, but things are unraveling much faster than the scientists applying, the climatologists applying Newtonian physics anticipated things would be getting worse, but not so soon. Not so bad so soon. The reason I propose, and there's lots of quantum physics data to support this, the reason I hypothesize as why things are escalating quickly is because the media is feeding us an ongoing chronic diet of fear-inducing and anger-inducing stories. They keep us worked up because if we're scared, we check the news more often. They hyperbolize about everything. Nothing that comes out of Donald Trump's mouth isn't used to freak people out. It isn't reported in the most slanted, frightening manner possible. I mean, they're not doing us a service by doing this, all right? They're keeping us all worked up, and we don't want that, and we don't like that. We're not having any fun to begin with, because we keep watching them. Stop watching them. Just stop. If you want to go and check the headlines on the internet rather than listening to them in the background while you do your stuff around the house, if you want to go on the internet and just check the headlines and see if they've blown up the world while you were busy doing other things, thank God. Hopefully meditating, getting your wah back when you're doing other things. Don't play that stuff in the background. Just check in quickly, skim through the headlines. That's it. See if there's anything you need to be aware of, right? Okay. Stay out of it otherwise. Also, the Weather Channel. Stop even. Turn off the sound. Okay? Turn off the sound. Don't allow. I used to have it playing in the background all the time. I was a Weather Channel addict. Okay? I love climatology, I love weather, and I've studied it since I was a little girl and thought I was making the rain come by singing to the sky. We are escalating this with our fear and our anger, etc. All of this outraged globe environment is us. Not all of it. Okay, some of it is, well, we caused it. The climate change is caused probably by us. We accelerated a natural, there are rhythms in the Earth's natural oscillation in temperatures and climate, okay? And sometimes the rhythms of what biological organisms in an environment are doing line up with, you know, as far as adding heat, etc., to the environment, that lines up in a way that the natural waves of, you know, increase in global temperature might line up with the perhaps human-induced wave peaks in global temperature, okay, and causing what that's called a constructive interference, and things get much worse, much faster. All right. So what we need to do is we need to focus our thoughts on soothing things about our empowerment, our natural empowerment, okay, that we can have a negative effect inadvertently as a side effect of our fear and our anger, etc., our frustration. We can have, therefore, a positive effect intentionally, consciously created by our directed attention and our intention coupled to our, I like to call it, hurled will. It's when you imagifest outside of you, as if it were all around you already, the situation that you will to experience. So you summon it internally, you visualize it, You smell it, you taste it, you hear it, you feel it. That's the most important part, really, the feeling, because you can do some really crappy visualization, not very detailed, but really feel it as though it were a reality, and it works very well. So don't get to thinking you have to have a huge visual, acoustic, and scent, library of memories you can pull up and immerse your attention in. You don't have to do that. And what's important is that you get the feeling going strong, you understand? So we want to have an impact on the weather. Right now, we want to have an impact on the weather for California. We want to wet the West Coast. The left coast needs our help. All right. So we don't want a huge downpour. That is not what you focus on. We want a steady rain. An initial downburst, I'm listening to Michael, an initial, who's talking to me in pictures and knowings, concepts, ideas. An initial downburst that lasts no more than an hour and delivers right around 1.5 inches to 2 inches of rain maximum, and then tapers off abruptly so that you're getting 1 inch of rain every, say, 6 hours, 6 to 8 hours. Just to put this in your mind so you've got an idea of what that's like. A downburst of 1 inch in an hour is a lot of rain, okay? That should stanch the fires. Now, there is a system offshore a bit too far north, offshore in the Pacific, a bit too far north with a lot of rain. There's also a system a bit too far south, a little around the equator, a little bit north of the equator, all right, that we might be able to manifest pulling it up, and we can certainly, because the natural tendency of the globe, the Newtonian physics, is for the storm in the Pacific, slightly too far north, to swing low, sweet chariot, okay? So because that is the natural thing to do for us to get this big omega sign in the wave of the storm coming across the country, we can manifest that easily. So I want you to find yourself a theta audio file of a storm and let it play in the background during the day and the night. Set your intention that the storm to the south, which isn't big, and the storm that's a little too far north in the Pacific come together, all right? So that storm in the Pacific, I guess it would be here, swings low like this, while and crosses the country like that, while at the same time the storm that's down below Baja, Mexico, all right, comes north of this, so the two front lines shear past one another, all right? We'll bring that into our imagifesting, the image of what we will to occur. We will will it gently and steadily, with love and in assurance, expecting we will get the outcome we're looking for. Because we're only amplifying the Newtonian physics of what already wants to occur through Newtonian physics. We are using a little quantum physics to amplify it, so it happens a little faster. We don't want to generate so much rain that there are mudslides. We just want a quick downpour, 1 inch to to an inch and a half in an hour. And then we want it to drop off to an inch in every 6 to 8 hours. This is the intention you set, and I want you to intend it all day long, every day, until California gets the rain it needs. My old man kitty Luigi has come to say hello. Hello, sweetheart. Okay, so that's that. Please start doing that. California needs our help. And when comes in the next few days, I hope, to check out the Newtonian physics of what is already inclined to occur. There's a body of hot water that comes through the Straits of Cuba, between Cuba and Yucatan, Mexico. Comes out of it's the Caribbean current, and it comes up into the Gulf of Mexico every year and signals the onset of spring and summer. I've been watching, it's a hot core of water that comes up out of the Caribbean. I've been watching that core of water for, well, since 2005, okay? Usually it doesn't show up until May, nice and strong, but in the last 3 years it's been showing up in March. And to be candid, I'm a little, I'm doing this because this particular subject matter, because I'm concerned, because that current, that hot water core never went away this winter. It didn't go away at all. It got a little lighter, not as bright and intense orange on the thermal maps, but the water in the Caribbean is very, very hot, much redder than it usually is on the thermals coming up. So we're going to have to intercede to try and use the Newtonian physics of the ocean currents, and I need to study that a little bit, really get an idea and check in with Michael in detail on what he wants us to attempt to manifest into experience, in order to bring some cold water upwellings into the Gulf of Mexico so that we can short circuit the things happening that I'm not even going to speak into being. Don't even allow your mind to go there. What we need to do is change the probabilities so that Newtonian probabilities will make the hurricane season much less catastrophic overall, okay? So I'm going to study that and see what we can intend in the way of moving ocean water around, so that we can cause upwellings of cold water where we need them. And that's all on that for now. Now, that was a long preamble. I want to speak to you very briefly about Ascension, because a lot of the spiritual teachers, I should say helpers, out there, because we're all teachers, but all of us, everyone, we teach. We teach best what we most need to learn in general, and a lot of what we teach is not very helpful. So let me put it this way: intentional spiritual helpers, a lot of us, are using the word ascension and what ascended master, and people don't really, these people don't really describe what that amounts to. And I would like to talk to you very briefly about what that amounts to. When I died, I noticed right away that it was just like wakening from a dispiriting dream. Now, I've been a lucid dreamer since I was about regular lucid dreamer since I was about 7, but I started earlier, around 6. Michael came into my dreams and taught me to wake up in the dream. Now, I would tend to wake up from the dream, and he would say, no, that's not what you want to do. You want to wake up in the dream and stay in the dream. And I was like, well, why? Why not just wake up entirely? And he said, well, because you have much more power and ability, and you can do fun things in the dream. If you stay in the dream and you're lucid, you can do cool things like fly, and make things happen the way you want them to. But only the lucid dreamer can change the dream. Now, he didn't use the word lucid. I didn't learn the word lucid as in lucid dreamer before I was about 15, and then I realized that it was a thing, and not everybody had it, or was doing it, I should say, because we're all capable of it. And a lot of lucid dreaming may actually happen, but the problem is you don't then carry the memory of the lucid dream back into the waking dream of the world. Back to that. So I noticed when I died that it was just like waking up from a dispiriting dream. You know, that feeling of, oh, look at that. Nothing in that environment could have ever hurt me to begin with. I'm an eternal, my reality springs from a higher dimension of reality, higher frequency. The dream can't touch me, much less hurt me. Okay, and it turned out when I went back into the dream of the world, I did so under Michael's advice by simply focusing my attention, immersing it completely, attention again, immersing it completely into that last moment I had been in the dream of the world in order to get back in. Okay, so I had done this many times with regular dreams that I had wakened from. It's nested dreams, like Russian dolls, nested. That's the nature of reality. So Ascension is basically, jumping way ahead now, Ascension is basically shifting to become lucid in the dream of the world, so that you recall that, your eternal nature, you recall it as an experience. The way you feel the world is no longer so threatening because you know it's a dream, and you realize that you're going to have many other such dream experiences, that you're an eternal being, and this is what we do for pleasure, for fun, for education. Ascension is a process then of shifting your identification away from being the character who's under constant threat of loss and dying to being lucid in the dream of the world at first, okay? It's nested lucidity. As you become more and more lucid, you remember more and more of your true self. Again, when I was in the lustrous vast during my NDE, the longer I was there, the more I began to remember my true self. I am not at all the character I appeared to be at the time in this world. I'm more approaching embodiment of the self that I am outside of space-time every day. And that is Ascension. That is Ascension. All right? You begin to embody more and more in your lucidity. You begin to know yourself, to identify as not the character, but first the observer of the self-talk and the ways you're rendering your environment with your expectations and your self-talk. Then to being the chooser. The chooser is no longer affected by the stories at all. It's a very interesting phenomenon. You may remember the emotions associated with the stories, but you no longer identify with them at all. You don't see the point in them. They don't move you. You're impassive. You're indifferent. It's a little awkward at first. People say, well, who would I be if I weren't identified with my stories? My story of me and my stories I tell myself. Who would I be? Well, it's not who, it's what. You would be free to choose what you will to experience. And you do that by the way you decide you're going to label things, the way you're going to message yourself about them, the lessons you take from the world. Now, messaging yourself is essentially messaging the universe, because you are that already. So the process of ascension, you go from thinking that the world is happening to you, to believing, trusting the world is happening for you. There's a pony in every pile of horse poo, or I should say that left every pile of horse poo. And you look chronically for the ponies. You look for them. You go, oh, look, poo, there must be ponies. Instant response. And then to realizing, no, it's not really happening for me. It's happening through me and as me. That is ascension. Your experience shifts to embodiment of more and more control over your subjective experience and, in fact, over what appears to be happening around you, which is projected by us all and individually, severally and individually. So that is ascension. And an ascended master has mastered absolutely nothing except for their illusions about the world, the things the world taught them in the course of growing up in a physical body. Because when you first enter the body, you generally do recall who you are outside of space-time as an infant, but you don't have the verbal capacity. You speak in the language of your heart constantly with your inner guides. But gradually, as your nervous system develops and all the tracks between the neurons, the nerves, get built that become your habitual way of perceiving and interacting with the world and thinking of yourself, you forget all of those memories. Not that they're not there, they're just not retrievable, they're not accessible. So you have to get to the age where you can become conscious instead of unconscious, which is, by that I mean unconscious. You're in identification with your self-talk and your stories and your role and your family and who you think you are, and you're in identification with being cool and having the right friends and all that, and you're thinking you're winning because you have more stuff, or thinking you're losing because you have less stuff. All right. So you grow up and you begin to be conscious of all that ridiculous self-talk and observing it, and then you realize you can choose more healthy self-talk that serves your bliss. So in the process of ascending, some people who are really caught up in their whatever strong, passionate emotion, and yourself even from time to time, you'll still, it's not an instant process usually, it's steps, okay? You can fall into despair, you can fall into anger, and that's losing your lucidity in the dream of the world. And then you waken. Now you don't know you've been unconscious until you waken, do you? And you go, oh, there, I lost myself for a while. Lost my footing in all that emotion. Sea of emotion swept me overboard, and for a while I thought I was all those waves. Okay, so that's ascension. It's mastery over yourself. It's mastery over your mind. It's learning to supervise your mind. I give you this information almost entirely freely. And then I offer to you my books. Only one on directly about this right now, nonfiction, Rise in Lucidity and Master Anxiety. It's less than $10. It's available at my store at crackedpotpublishing.com. And I offer you that in order to have a reference to go back to. Not because I'm making huge amounts of money off of it. And then I offer my services as your coach to help you ferret out all the places that you are still in identification with stories you're telling yourself, so that you experience a shift in a sense of empowerment. The world is not happening to you anymore, it's happening for you and through you, and you can see a path forward to lucidity, to brightening your lucidity. Now, most people lose their lucidity again and again, so I'm here. I'm not expensive to work with, and I always give you more than I ever promised you I'd give you. I promised you 40 minutes, and generally people get quite a bit more than that. Because I need your help. Earth Venue is in a state of upheaval, and we can moderate it. And I need you lucid in the dream of the world. So Yes, some of this certainly pays my bills so that I can continue to help. But really, that's a side effect, and not that big a deal. What is a big deal is that we come into a realization of our godly estate as quickly as possible and as profoundly as possible, that we remember who we are, that we put ourselves back together, remember who we are across realms and worlds, so that we can step into our role, into our righteous, rightful role and godly estate, and use imaginifestation, intention, and our hurled wills to project around us a calming of Earth's present state of upheaval. We have to calm ourselves to do that. We have to master our minds, which is a book I have to get to work on just now, I realize. It started, should be out within the next month. So be looking for that at crackedpotpublishing.com, which is where you can also go at the bottom of the homepage to sign up for coaching with me, so I can help you get centered in who you really are, what you really are. I love you all. Let's put out that little lie with which we're all so identified.